Hi, I'm Mark Fuentes,
And I'm Don King.
and welcome to another episode of Mobile Talk.
And today we are going to be talking with Mark, as we told you at the end of our last episode, about his experience going from a Windows phone back to Android. And notice I'm saying back to because Mark had a really cool Android phone for a while. I think that was the one that you used when we went to Boston and you were taking pictures of the mean streets of Boston.
Yes, it was.
That was the one, yeah. And so you've had the experience of going from Android to Windows and then back to Android. So, folks, those of you listening, we're not so much talking about you going from Windows to Android specifically, but what's involved when you leave a platform, like people leave maybe iOS and go to Android. There's specific things they run into, of course, but then when they come back to iOS, or if they leave Android and go to iOS and then come back to Android, that's not an uncommon situation for people. So what our focus here is how do you navigate those changes? We'll be having Mark do a lot of the talking because he's done that recently. And Mark, what was it that led you to a Windows phone to begin with when you left Android?
Um, that's a good question. I wanted to try the platform because my understanding was that the Microsoft apps that I use at work, like Word, Excel, and the Office remote stuff, was really good on Microsoft Windows phones, and it wasn't very good on Androids. And although Android had like a Windows, not like a Windows, a Word app and an Excel app, it was really like a viewer more than really integrated into the system like it was on Windows Phone. And then there was something called Office Remote where you can actually control Word or PowerPoint or Excel with your phone on your computer. So there was a lot of good reasons to want to do that, and I wanted to try Windows Phone. So I did. I made the transition to Windows Phone, had to create an account with Microsoft, and
And how long were you on the Windows phone? Do you remember?
it was over a year. I'm thinking it was about 2 years,
Okay.
maybe even longer than that.
I think if you got much longer, you would have been using that phone in Boston.
Yeah, probably true. Probably true. So it's probably right around 2 years,
Okay.
maybe a little bit less. And it worked. It worked pretty well. And then I went back to Android. What was it? The end of July.
Okay, so what was it that led you to make the switch from Windows back to Android? I don't think it wasn't expense or anything, right?
No, it wasn't. And really, it was. I was at a point where several things were going on. One was that the some of the best features of Cortana, which by the way, as far as a personal assistant goes, Cortana is way superior to Google on the Android phone and Siri on the iPhone, iPad. I mean, just way better.
So
And this
Cortana was one of the reasons for going with a Windows phone.
and Cortana, yeah, under Windows 8.1, which is what the phone was originally. That was one of the reasons why I went to it, because Cortana, they said it was such a great personal assistant, and it was. It was very useful, way better than Google and way better than Siri, in my opinion. And this is coming from someone who's had both, or all of them. So, but one of the most useful features of Cortana, and some of the other, also good features, were when I upgraded to Windows 10, not there anymore. According to
Wait a minute,
Microsoft,
what was not there anymore? Cortana?
no, Cortana's there, but some of the best features about Cortana were not there.
I got you. Okay.
For example, one of the best features of Cortana was if I have a headset plugged into it, or a Bluetooth headset, or if I just have the phone sitting there, I could change the settings. where if I get a text message, for example, it'll tell me, you have a text message, here's who it's from, what do you want to do with it? You want to read it? You want to ignore it? You want to just reply? And then if you tell it to read it, it'll read it to you, and then you can reply to it, or you can, all orally. And when they went to Windows 10, that feature isn't there anymore. Which was one of the best features, especially when you're driving and whatnot. It's one of the best features. So Cortana wasn't what she was, and every single time Windows feedback came up asking me about stuff, I would keep putting in there, I would answer what they asked me about, and I would say, oh, by the way, you got to fix Cortana because it sucks the way it is now. Give us back that ability to have it read text messages to us and stuff. And it just didn't do that anymore. I also experienced a lot of problems with the phone crashing and apps crashing, and
that had not happened before under the Windows 8.
That had not happened under 8. Right. That had not happened under 8. And really looking at the phone and its functionality, I really noticed almost no difference going from Windows 8 to Windows 10. A slightly better battery life, but slightly. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, the look and feel of it was pretty much the same, and some minor improvements, like in the live tiles and stuff, which they could have done under Windows 8. So there really wasn't any big great thing about Windows 10. Now, one thing that did happen that was pretty cool was I could sit at my other Windows 10 devices, like my Surface, and I could go into Cortana and say, text Caitlin, my daughter, and it would say, okay, type your message, and I would type it in, and it would go through my phone and send it to her. Mm-hmm. But if she replied, it wouldn't come to my phone. It would come to my phone, rather. It wouldn't come to my Surface. So it's like you got to get your phone anyway to get the reply. So that, although is a little bit helpful, maybe it's not as good as it could be.
Now, it kind of sounds like to me that alone, and not that there's just one thing, but there's several things you're talking about that either were not improved or were slight disappointments. Was there something that had changed in Android in the meanwhile that kind of made you think that you want to go back to it?
Not really. And Android is really hard to say something in Android changes, because although the base of Android is the same, there are like 1,000 versions of it, and every phone manufacturer does their own thing to Android, and so that's why there's like so many different versions of Android, and every single one of them, although they all work kind of the same, mm-hmm. there's not really like, it's not like iOS or Windows where you could pick up every single one and they're all the same. They're all custom to that manufacturer, that phone manufacturer, and sometimes manufacturers have different versions of Android on different phones. So sure. Whereas you may get this kind of Samsung phone that's got this version of Android, and a different Samsung phone has a different version of Android. They all work pretty similar, but
what's been the number one challenge of going from the Windows Phone back to an Android phone?
The good thing about going back to something is there's very little setup required. You have to have a Gmail account or a Google account to have an Android phone. Already had that in place from the last time I had an Android phone. And all my apps that I've downloaded off of Google Play were all there. I just had to re-download them to this phone. Contact information. So really going back was not a big deal. The thing that was a big deal was all of my contacts in my Windows Phone, which, by the way, and I'll talk about, the Windows Phone was much better at some things than Google, or than Android. But all my contacts in my Windows Phone could not be moved over to the Android. So I basically had to go in and put them all back in. But as it turned out, my daughters and I went on a pretty long trip, right after I got the phone. So I handed my old Windows phone and my new phone to my daughter, my 18-year-old daughter. I said, "Here, put all my contacts in this phone." And she went through and put all the contacts back in for me. So, so I didn't have to do it. But so that was probably the biggest issue, is that going across platform, there's no way to move your contacts from one place to the other.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the meantime, did you find that, like for instance, the Word app, quick context here, I've been on iOS for a while, and it used to be kind of that way on iOS as far as Word being basically a viewer. In the meantime, though, they've released some pretty spiffy apps that allow you to fully interact with Office documents. Has that happened on Android also, or are there other things that have updated while you were gone?
Yeah, actually, while I was gone, Microsoft basically put out a fully functional mobiles Office suite where Office Remote works on the Android phone. I've already tested it out. That was one of the first things I tested with my Surface. Works great. It connects. It connects to my computer, Windows 10, with Bluetooth. So that works fine. They've got a really good Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, not just viewer, but I can edit and create. And the only thing that's not real great is if you have tables in Word, they don't really translate to that smaller screen very well. You got to kind of mess with it. But really, other than that, the Office suite for the Android as well as for iOS is great. So there's not that issue. The only thing that I miss is the calendar function, because the Windows Phone better integrated my calendar, work calendar, and on my Microsoft Exchange that we use at the institutional level. It's so much better integrated, the calendar. And on the lock screen, it showed me all the appointments I had that day. Whereas the Android phone, on the lock screen, it will not show me the appointments. I have to actually go in, look at the calendar, and see it. So I had to get used to going to the calendar every day and looking to see what appointments I had, as opposed to it just telling me. So
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it would and the Windows phone would kind of tell you in advance, so you know what's coming up and all. It was a lot better, but I can live with that for of course the phone, and of course if I had gotten a new Windows phone, it would have been faster and all that. But this Android phone is a lot faster, and it has all the apps that I can't get on a Windows platform, like my banking app and some other stuff that there's no Windows platform for.
Okay, it kind of sounds like the availability of the apps wound up being the linchpin that led to the decision to change. So do you have, for listeners, do you have for them tips if you're preparing to move back to a platform?
If you're preparing to move back to a platform, you're probably in a better position. You will want to try to back up your contacts somehow, because that seems to be the thing that doesn't translate from one platform to the other really well. So if you can back up your contacts and get them someplace where you can get at them from anywhere, that would probably be helpful. Or download it somehow and maybe import it. There's got to be a better way to do that. So I would investigate that. But if you're going back to a platform, the username, the user IDs and accounts for Gmail or iTunes or whatever, those will all stay, provided you remember your passwords and stuff. And I'm sure it's got a password reset if you don't. If you're thinking about moving platforms and not going back, but just changing platforms, there's going to be a lot to get used to, and you're going to want to do your research first and see if you can get the apps that you routinely use on that new platform. It's usually not that big of a deal with iOS and Android, but Windows is becoming very limited.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing.
Well,
I think. Go ahead.
even like even Amazon. I got an email from, and this was kind of one of the deciding factors. Got an email from Amazon that said, "Oh, we've noticed you downloaded the Amazon app for Windows device. We're discontinuing that." And I think it was as of like August 1st or something, or maybe it was September 1st. And I'm like, okay, if even Amazon is abandoning the Windows platform, I think maybe I want to move, make the switch back. I love my Surface, and I love its functionality, but I think as far as my primary communication device, I want to have some more flexibility.
And just real quick, this is getting really techie, I guess you'd say, but I know when we went from an Android to an iPhone, I think I remember that we were able to just take the SIM card, that took the phone account stuff right over. Were you able to do that kind of thing in this?
If you're with this phone, I wasn't, because it took a different kind of SIM card. There are like 3 different kinds of SIM cards. So if it has the same kind of SIM card, you can do that. Mm-hmm. But if you have like Verizon or I think Sprint, they don't have SIM cards. So you got to be on like AT&T or AT&T, Nextel. I think there's a couple others that have SIM cards. So if the phone you're buying has the same kind of SIM card as the one you already have, then yes, you can move that. And that's a good way to get your contacts from one place to another. Just save them all in the SIM card and then move that. But I needed a new card for this phone because of it was a different kind of SIM card.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. We're running a bit long on our episode today, so let's go ahead and wrap this one up. Not quite sure what's coming up. We've got half a dozen topics that we've talked about. We'll get some more into the pipeline. You can watch for new postings, I hope, about once a week. We have been trying to do that every Tuesday, and under the pressure of starting a new semester, that kind of went by the wayside. But we'll get back on that schedule again. You can keep track of what's happening with the Mobile Fellows program at Pellissippi State by going to blogs.pstcc.edu. Fellows. You can follow us on Twitter at PS_mobs. You can also see our new Facebook page, fairly new at this point, by going to facebook.com/PSMobs. Although I guess I need to double check that address. But in any case, we hope that you will continue to follow us. Let us know what you're interested in, and we look forward to talking more mobile talk with you later.
See ya.